Good evening, everyone. I'm Sean Phelan, and this is the Philly Boots Rugby Round Table. Welcome to this discussion we're going to have about club finances and the sort of the struggles that we've seen over the last few months with lockdown and COVID and everything, and sort of how we can bounce back from that and get our finances in order, and what we can do to move rugby forward at our clubs in the next couple of years. So I want to bring in today's panel, and we have Sid Millar from Huntingdon and District RFC. We have Mark Covington from Snap Sponsorship, and we have Jimmy Rees from Warminster RFC. How are we, gents?
All good, thank you.
Very well, Sean. Thanks very much.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming on. Sid, tell us a little bit about the struggles that Huntingdon might be facing at the moment, and I'm sure most clubs in the country are facing as well.
So obviously, like all the clubs, we were locked down sort of like sometime in March. We never quite recovered from that. We never quite recovered from that, because a lot of our big fundraising events are backloaded in the season. So we lost our big summer ball. We lost our farmers' lunch, which we call Tweed Fest, because sort of we get about 100 farmers turning up, all wearing sort of like country apparel. We had various different things. It was our turn to host the county finals as well, so that would have been a big day. We had a beer festival lined up. We had all sorts of things, and we lost all of that. So that's a huge amount of income we lost. Coupled with that, we're not allowed to use our clubhouse over the summer. So we couldn't have done anything anyway.
Why is that?
But because we're based at Huntingdon Racecourse, and they're our landlords, and just the arrangement we have with them means that they normally let out sort of like our clubhouse and the pitches during the summertime to raise extra income for them. As it's turned out, no other events were allowed, and they've been using the rugby clubhouse as an emergency ambulance station. So some goods come out of it, but not necessarily to our finances.
Sure. And Jimmy, Warminster RFC, how are they coping or not coping so far this summer?
I mean, for us, we are quite lucky position, to be honest. A lot of our clubs run by volunteers, so we haven't act on staff or anything like that. So that's obviously quite a good position to be in. In terms of our clubhouse as well, we sort of 10 years ago built that ourselves. So we've got no real outgoings during the summer anyway. So we're actually dealing with it quite well. Obviously, we've lost income, like Sid mentioned, our vice president lunches, our end of the season dinner, stuff like that have all been postponed. So we'd have lost a bit of revenue through the bar there, and any hirings we have, like functions and stuff, has also been cancelled. So situation, but
have we lost Jimmy?
We're quite content and quite happy where we are at the moment, to be fair.
Yeah, I think it's sort of tough for everybody at the moment. And Mark, welcome. How is the sponsorship market so far? Is it going to be as tough as people think?
Did you get any of that?
Are clubs losing sponsors?
It's a real mixed bag, to be honest, Sean. I think we haven't got to the full extent of what the impact's going to be yet, because I think there are still clubs that haven't spoken to their sponsors, which I'd urgently encourage everyone to do. Should have spoke to them a long time ago. We've seen everything. We've seen sponsors asking for refunds. We've seen people terminating deals mid-contract. And equally, we've seen sponsors that have stood by clubs, offered 100% support, paid their rights fees, and are sitting tight. And I think the clubs that are faring the best out of this are those that have been proactive, reached out to their sponsors, agreed pivots on the deals, looking at digital alternatives, or just generally, you can still communicate to your members just because we're not playing the game. So, I think the key message is, be proactive, speak to the sponsors now. We just all need to be really human about it. So I think if we get out there and have those conversations, open and honestly, and there's plenty of opportunity to either extend the deals for a future season, or as I say, to have some sort of pivot, different messaging, something COVID related, because all those businesses are equally as interested as bouncing back commercially as clubs are. So I think there's a win-win in there. You just got to have the conversations.
Definitely, it's all about being proactive, whether it's sponsorship or any funding opportunities. Sid, you're on the board of the East Midlands RFU sort of funding and grants panel. Can you tell us a little bit more about that role and what is there available from the RFU at the moment?
So, I think the short answer is very little. Sort of like, I think their financial plight is fairly well known. So yes, I'm on the Facilities and Fundings Committee for the East Midlands Rugby Union, which is one of the constituency bodies sort of like that make up the overall RFU. East Midlands covers sort of parts of Cambridgeshire, Northamptonshire, parts of Bedfordshire, Lincolnshire, all sorts of bits and pieces. There are pots of money left. Sort of like there were local rugby plans which were set up at the start of the season, and not all CBs have finished up those pots of money that were given by the RFU. So it's worthwhile asking your local RDO if there's any money available left, if there's any sort of scrapping around. Also ask your local CBs whether there's any money left in their accounts, because there's no point in them sitting on reserves when clubs are struggling. So if you need them, go and chat to them. But probably of more topical relevance, I saw today that the RFU have reopened their RFU emergency loans scheme. Now, from what I've read, these are interest-free loans repayable over 3 years. You can borrow between 2k and 10k. And this can be used for any purposes, sort of like, whether it's for paying rent or bills or sort of like just keeping the club ongoing. If you want details of that, go to the England Rugby website, look at go to the Running Your Club tab, and then under Coronavirus, which is a separate tab again, you'll find the loans section, and you can get a print off the application form there.
Yeah, definitely. If you need it and it's there, go and get it.
Absolutely. But remember, it is a loan, not a grant.
No, but if you're desperate for it and you've got a good plan in place, then definitely I think go and check out what is on offer from everybody. I think.
And the Jimmy, two other sources. Sorry. I was just going to say there are two other sources of that you can look for. So one is the local community foundations. Every county seems to have a community foundation. There's 46 of them across the UK, and they tend to run things like now where landfill operators have got to mitigate the landfill tax, they give grants to sporting clubs and things like that. It tends to be these community foundations that actually sort of like run the schemes for them. So you can find them at www.ukcommunityfoundations.org, or just Google community foundations, and they'll help you out. And there's also some money left, I believe, in the Sport England Community Emergency Fund, which is something sort of separate from the RFU funds.
So there's plenty to get people to get their teeth into, and find go and check out the internet and find out what is available and get as much as you can from all sorts of places. Sport England. So Jimmy, where do you think clubs should be starting their sort of bounce back? They're thinking about bouncing back. We know rugby's not going to be too far away. And rugby clubs can most of them can open their clubhouses now. Is this summer gonna help?
Sean, I'm happy to pick that up for you if Jimmy's struggling for connection there.
Yeah, go on, Mark.
So I think we're quite privileged in that we sit in a position where we speak to lots of clubs all over the country. So we're seeing clubs all approach this differently. Some are still very much, if you like, in lockdown. The doors haven't opened, and players haven't come back to training. We've got others that have very much come back. They are exploring the full extent of the socially distanced small group training, and they've got players back out on the pitch. And we've even seen some clubs that have had
I think
welcome back
for what we've done at Warminster is just try to operate as usual. I know obviously it's an unusual situation, but we're in regular contact with all our
Jimmy seems to be behind everybody. Jimmy, I think you've got some connection issues. We can see you, but we can't hear you.
Okay, so if I carry on, Sean, what I was basically saying was the other end of the extreme there is, we've seen some clubs have, delivering a welcome back type party already. I think I saw Sutton Epsom have opened their doors. They had social distancing arrangements open the bar last weekend or the weekend before with fixed capacity of 150 people. They had outside marquees and socially distanced seating outside on the pitch. I know Cobham did something similar. They had barbecue. They had a welcome back party, which was effectively, I think, bacon rolls and barbecue going, and bring your own blanket, buy a pint, take away, sit somewhere out on the pitch, and they marked it all out. So I think the reality is it's about exploring the guidance and then seeing what's feasible with the facilities you have. And obviously, it's not going to work for everyone, but broadly, if we've all got pitches and facilities, we can create fairly well socially distanced spaces, and people can come back and start enjoying responsibly at the clubs. And I think if nothing else, if we just re-engage our members, because it's been a long time away, and there's been a lot of question mark around whether we are going to play this season, and now that we're starting to see that positive news flow through the pipes, I think it's I think start small and little and often, and try and bring back your audience into the club, and re-engage them socially, because it's so much more than just what happens on the pitch. It's all the parents and volunteers and everything else. It's like getting everyone back in the fold and back engaged. So my personal belief is that obviously following guidelines and doing it responsibly, but I'd get everyone back and try and do the most we can.
Yeah, definitely. No one's seen each other for so long. Can't wait to get back into a clubhouse and have a beer with people. Let's take a question. It's going to pop up on the screen. Stephen Leach. Mark, do you think sponsorship will move to a smaller local arrangements over larger club offering?
Yeah, I can see there's an elaboration of that question as well, slightly further down, 2 down from there, which is the question there is around, do we think that post lockdown we're going to see smaller, more bespoke deals with local organisations versus larger organisations with whole club offerings? There's no right or wrong answer to this. There's going to be some clubs out there that have got large brands, regional, national, international organisations that sponsor them in a large or small way, and some will retain those sponsors and some will lose them. It's inevitable. And then there's also organisations, clubs out there that are going to be sponsored by small organisations for probably quite modest sums of money. I saw something pop up on social media this week. Chiswick Rugby Club have been sponsored by the local biltong shop for their man of the match. So every week, I can only assume, and don't quote me, I could be wrong, but I'm going to make a stab in the dark here that that man of the match is going to be receiving a week's supply of biltong or something of that similar nature, and there may well be some financial incentive for the club around sales. I'm guessing, but there's those small local deals, and to get back to the point of your question, I think there is just as much value in having a large volume of low value deals as there is in having a smaller number of larger value deals. And I don't personally think there's going to be anything which we can specifically label as COVID related, which will dictate on which side it falls. Factors that more influence that, in my opinion, is the competency of the club of delivering value. And when I talk about value, I'm talking about the activations and how we bring it to life. So if you've got either the competency or the resources, the people, the volunteers to run more complex activations to deliver greater value and exposure to those brands, then you're more likely to command a higher value. If they are, dare I say, less sponsorship and more advertising, stick a bit of, as it's crudely put, lick and stick. If you're branding assets around the club and not delivering a huge amount of activation at lower value, then I would suggest they are more likely to be local businesses. But I had a great conversation this week with Phil Horsford over at Dice Rugby Club in Aberdeen. They've been successful in securing 4 or 5 player sponsorships in the last couple of weeks. They're relatively low value, but of course, if you've got a playing squad of 40, 50 players at low value, they soon start to add up if you get lots of the small numbers. And as the conversation I had with him kind of unfolded, we were looking at the fact they didn't have an automotive sponsor. And the question was raised around, well, what value does a club in Aberdeen with 55 members have to an automotive brand? And my simple response was, well, how many of those 45, 50 players drive a car to come to training and playing? And the answer was, well, the vast majority. I said, well, that's 45 or 50 MOTs that need to be done every year. So, don't go into necessarily the big chains and retailers, but I'd be going and knocking on the door of, John's Automotives Limited, and saying, well, if we were to give you, let's take a stab in the dark, 50% of those players, 20 people would come in and have their car MOT throughout the year, and 10% of those cars failed their MOT, and the average cost of a repair was £100, which is probably a very conservative number. All of a sudden, a couple £100 worth of sponsorship for the water bottles looks like a very reasonable investment for the return that organisation is going to get. So I think it's about looking carefully at what we have as rights owners, as clubs, and being proactive in going out and having the conversations. But open those conversations with what you think your value proposition is, and how you position yourself to those potential sponsors. But I don't think there's any relevance in the size of the businesses. But I suppose if you want quick wins, I would be looking to the smaller local businesses that you can go in and have sensible conversations with quite quickly.
Welcome back, Jimmy. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Fantastic.
Before you left us, I asked how are Warminster aiming to bounce back in terms of their revenue thing as soon as possible.
So we've been trying to operate as normal. I know it's very normal situations, but we're still obviously looking at our sponsors and talking to our sponsors, making sure that sort of side of the revenue is coming in ready for next season. Obviously, with the restriction, the allowance of sort of groups of 6 had come into training. We're starting training, but now the bar's opening, so we can invite members to the club on a Saturday now as well. So we're sort of trying to, obviously, just the normal things that everyone's doing, trying to get members re-engaged in the club, trying to make it a good, fun experience. Obviously, gearing up to sort of when we get to the other side. Also, all of our events that were postponed, we've rescheduled them for the beginning of the season. So hopefully those activities and those social events we had planned prior will be done when the season starts again. So hopefully not a lot of missed opportunities for revenue that side of it.
Yeah, well, hope for the best, I guess. Sid, I'm going to bring this question to you. This is from Graham. Is it finally time for grassroots clubs to reset and address falling numbers? I don't know whether you mean funding numbers, seeking new initiatives to be inclusive and relevant, focus on minis, women's rugby. Would these sort of areas bring in added RFU funding or
I think it's sort of it's quite well known that that women's rugby has always been the poor relation. The fact that they're still scrabbling around for a sponsor for the Tyrrell's 15s, their premier competition, shows that that they are unfortunately play second fiddle, which is ridiculous. Because as we all know, they play an extraordinary brand of rugby, and in Emily Scarrett, you probably got the best rugby player of either sex in the world. Is again a fantastic player. I think clubs have to diversify to survive. I think the majority of rugby clubs in the UK are only surviving now because they developed minis and juniors 20, 30 years ago. So it's a natural progression to make sure that you have girls rugby and women's rugby playing. Walking rugby is something that I'm actually thinking about looking into for my club and for the area, simply because my knees aren't good enough to run anymore. So but I can still throw a ball around. But I think that's for clubs to survive, you've got to have a broad base, and if that means bringing in a women's section, it means more admin, it means more coaching, it means more more resources need to be thrown at it. But I think for the long-term good of all rugby clubs, you do need to broaden, you do need to diversify, and you do need to have all these different sections as part of your club going forward.
Is there any? How do I put this? Is there any added money from the RFU if you were to say, well, we're going to set up a women's section, or we're going to set up a mini and junior section?
No.
Is there sort of a pot that people can dip into?
No, not at all. No, you have to do that off your own back, but then you reap the rewards of doing that.
You have to do it off your own back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the local RDOs who are tasked with increasing rugby participation, they will help. They will offer guidance. They'll offer coaching, so that they will help. But there's no actual extra funds for doing that. However, once you set it up, there are increased memberships. There's more revenue, across the tea counter, hopefully across the bar as well. You get more people coming along to your functions, if they're made welcome. So that the actual benefits come down the line rather than up front.
I would just add to that you become considerably more attractive to sponsors as well. I think the common misconception is the most valuable thing that everyone's got is the front of the first team shirt, and it couldn't be further from the truth. And we still live in an era where the vast majority of sponsorship revenue is often tied to international tickets and the front of the shirt, as I've just mentioned. But the reality is the value is in your youth and minis. It's in the volume of your membership. It's in ultimately the number of people that have got the propensity to spend money. So, the bigger your club, the more diverse your club is, the more brands that you potentially appeal to, because everyone sells something, and everyone that's a member of your club is a potential consumer for that brand. So the larger the number and the more diverse it is, the more businesses that you're likely to be attractive to.
Yeah.
What is that?
And I think you're right there, Mark. When we did our last shirt deal, was with the local builder who's building a new housing development down the road. They weren't that interested in the fact that we had a first team and a second team and put the names on the shirts. What they were interested in is having 300 to 400 kids running around on a Sunday morning with their brands plastered all over them. And that's the key thing. As you say, the more diverse thing, the more attractive you are to sponsors.
And let's be perfectly honest about it. We all know the reality of that is that that's 400 minis kids whose kit either mum or dad are going to be sticking in a washing machine, seeing that brand every single weekend, minimum of once a week. And if we take age profiling of the club membership and who's likely to be doing house improvements, building that extension, the additional bedroom, the brother, the sister, the loft conversion, that is the youth and minis parents of your club, which is, again, just reinforces even more, that is where your value sits. And the youth and mini section of any club is the most valuable asset that you have from a sponsorship perspective, without doubt.
Jimmy, you're also with Dorset and Wiltshire RFU. How can a club in that area go getting one of these grants or loans or anything from the county board?
So Dorset and Wilts have, when it first happened, the COVID happened, they set up packs for clubs. So signage, hand sanitizer. They do the Legionnaire tests in the clubhouses as well. So that's an initial pack that's been set up for all clubs that will receive that. But also now because obviously a lot of the represented side of the rugby was cancelled early and can play as additional pot fund now. So if you contact pretty sure around all CBs, if you contact your secretary, there should be a funding application they can send across to you for any sort of essential work-ins or stuff that could help your club through these tricky times.
Is that the same with you, Sid?
Yeah, so in the East Midlands, I mentioned earlier, sort of the East Midlands sort of like CB have got sort of like some funds in the bank, some for a rainy day, and these are those rainy days. But again, it's not a huge amount. The RFU funding for clubs sort of has been cut progressively over the past couple of years that I've been involved, and I think there are 43 clubs, I think, in the East Midlands, and I think we've got something like £16,000 to give to clubs sort of like for this current season, which you've then got to think sort of like do you give sort of a couple of big grants for important things, or do you try and sort of spread it out as much as possible around the area and give lots of little bits? It's very tricky. The funding it just isn't there sort of like from the RFU anymore. Sort of like and hopefully sort of these days will come back once they've sorted themselves out financially. But for now, so I think we've got to live in the reality that we shouldn't expect any grants certainly from the RFU. But I say these emergency loans which they've reopened today, they could well be helpful for people sort of like in the short term. So the loans again are sort of there. You get between £2,000 to £10,000, and they can be for just about anything as long as you qualify. As long as you haven't got thousands of pounds squirreled away in your bank account. So these are meant to be emergency loans. But yeah, have a look on the England Rugby website for more details on that.
Thanks, Sid. Let's take another question. This one is from Mark Bryan. Now that the pubs are open, I think club bars should open every day to bring back the social club atmosphere of yore. That's a difficult one because you will want this outlay, but then you've got to pay your bar staff and turn the electric on and have all those sorts of outlays. I think if you've got a staff of volunteers, then yeah, why not? But it's sort of judging that the risk versus the reward, so to speak. Are you going to lose money by employing some bar staff and opening up? You've got to sort of work out which is it worth it for 2 or 3 people to come in every night?
I think, yeah, my view on that, Sean.
Jimmy, are you open every night?
Sorry,
Mark. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I think it's you don't know what you don't try, and I think there's obviously a commercial exposure, as you rightly say, to opening up, employing your staff. There's been some clubs that have done events quite successfully, or I'm not sure if we can, strictly speaking, call them events, but opening up and inviting people to come down and pick up a bacon roll and have a coffee or a pint on the weekend. But I think it comes down to what can you control. You can open up a booking system. If you were to get 20 bookings, you're open. If you don't, you're not. You can do it on an ad hoc basis. If your memberships are from a tight knit community and geographically relatively close, you can make it quite a short term announcement. If you get 20 people that say they're interested, you're open. If you don't, you don't. And flexible closing time. We personally, as growing up in my club, we had a flexible closing time. The bar was open, but if people were sitting there and they weren't drinking, and the door, it was everyone out. We're shutting. So if the commercial viability isn't there, then you have a flexible workforce that can either turn on the taps, quite literally, or turn them off. So I think at this stage, we're not dealing with something that we've seen before. So I don't think there is a right or a wrong answer. My view on all of this stuff is like marketing. It's trial and error. I think give it a go. If it doesn't work, stop doing it. But I think the potential upside far outweighs the risk. Certainly for trying it for the first couple of times. And again, it all comes down to making sure we're sitting inside the government guidelines for obvious reasons. But we do have the ability to open. So my personal belief would be, let's get on and do it.
I think the overriding thing, though. I was going to say, so I think the overriding thing has to be safety. Even though sort of like pubs are allowed to open and everything, there are quite strict guidelines over sort of like I say, booking a place, keeping social distancing, having proper signposting, and a lot of rugby clubs, particularly the old ones, are not built for that. It's very difficult to have one-way systems going to the gents. Sort of like if you like, sort of like for a lot of buildings. Sort of like a lot of the bar areas are too small, sort of like for people to do it properly. I know you could do sort of waiter service and sort of like and things like that. But I think sort of the primary thing for all clubs has to be sort of like the safety first, and certainly that's the approach that our committee have taken. It may well be that sort of like that gets loosened as we get a little more comfortable with the ideas, but sort of like I don't see certainly people that I know at my club sort of are not rushing back, and they're training and they're socially distant training, sort of like in accordance with the RFU guidelines and everything. But I'm not sure we're going to see the bar open sort of like in the next few weeks anyway.
Jimmy, how often is your clubhouse open?
So we opened last Saturday all day. So we started at 12 and then opened to about 6. So like Mark said, we were like open door policy, sort of flexible opening times. When people were there, we kept open. If they weren't, we just shut them. It was only open to members, so that was our safety precautions. We had also all member details. And we also had, because we were a bit out of the way, because we had the seniors training in the morning, we already had that sort of 20 guys up there ready for the bar to open. So we had a market for it. So we weren't just purposely opening and hoping 3 people or 4 people turn up. We already had sort of 20 guys up there, and then a lot of the members come up in the afternoon. So I mean, for us, it was quite a good day to have the pub open. But like on to Sid's point, our clubhouse is quite modern, so a lot of one-way systems were able to be done. The gents had an easy access in and out, and it was quite easy to keep to that social distancing. So for us, it works. We're trialing Sunday this week, so we'll have Saturday and Sunday, and just see how it goes. But it is just for us, it's just seeing if we can get people up there, and if no one turns up, it's not. We haven't paid any staff to volunteers. We haven't lost anything, so it's just like you said, the risk of just opening, see if anyone comes up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, if you can do it. Here's another question. And this one is from is it going to come up? Here it comes. Are club mergers an answer? Tribalism aside. Who would like to take that one on? Because that is it's quite actually. Mark, you were were you there when Guildford and Guildfordians merged?
Yeah, I was.
A few years back.
It was a long time ago now. It certainly feels like a long time ago, and I was certainly too young to be involved in any of those discussions. And from what I understand of the past, one club had a good playing side and a strong squad, and the other had a better financial position. And again, this is, as I understand it, it might not be strictly exactly correct. So there was a natural case for a merger. It meant that we would have had collaboratively a stronger playing base and a more solid financial resource. Obviously, rivalry aside, that was a local derby, and it was, and there was still some of the old guard who still kind of resent some of that merger. But in the main, we've come through it, and it's been pretty positive. I mean, we've got we were never big enough as a physical site to host all of the youth and minis, so the youth and minis remain at the old site, and then they come through. I think, like all these things, you're always going to have historic politics and rivalries and things. But if clubs are struggling, then I think anything is on the table these days. I don't think we should ignore any opportunities. And if a merger is an answer rather than a club folding and players being without a club to go to, I'd far rather see a merger happen to make sure we still get games on and bring through the next generation of players. Tough as that may be, as a pill to swallow for people that have been out and played some tough matches. I think we all just need to get above that for the greater good of the game and making sure that we provide rugby for the next generation. So for me, I think like in business, if there's a viable merger which is going to deliver value to both parties and it's a genuine win-win, there's in my view, there's nothing to lose.
No,
I
definitely.
think you're right.
Just to add to that, sorry,
who's taking it? Who's going first?
Sorry, I was just adding on
Go on, Jimmy.
Mark's point. We've recently merged with our local rivals in our Mears and Junior section, because between both of us, it was both struggling, and that was a couple of years ago. We both merged, and now both clubs are, in a senior sense, are doing quite well. So it wasn't obviously nothing related to what happened, but sometimes you, like Mark said, you swallow your pride and you just have to go with it. And both clubs are benefiting from now. So, in modern times, I think times are changing. You've got to adapt to sort of compete with other sports.
I think you're right, Jimmy. So it's but we have no plans to merge with anyone just at the moment. But I have had sort of some wise old heads sort of within the club sort of who surprised me by saying that might have to be an option sort of going forwards. Quite who we've merged with, I'm not sure. We've got one club sort of down the road, about 8 miles down the road, and the next nearest one's about 15 miles down the road. And they're our local rivals, and sort of I'm not sure they like us terribly much. But it was ever thus, sort of in the rugby world. But the economic sense, the economics of it makes sense. If we haven't got a big enough playing base, and obviously that's a huge problem throughout the country. Senior players are disappearing. We're not getting enough university leavers coming back to the club in the first place. There's all sorts of other pressures. There's all sorts of other competing activities that people want to try instead of getting muddy on a Saturday afternoon. Maybe mergers are the way forward. Maybe it does need to be slightly slimmed down. I used to play in Surrey, and our closest home game was literally across the railway lines. Now I could throw a stone and hit old Paul Lyons' ground, just about. Where we are now in the East Midlands, we're travelling some really big distances just to play normal league games, 50, 60 miles. In fact, a couple of seasons ago, we had to travel up to Chesterfield, which is miles away, to go. So the imperative for merging is probably better in areas where there are denser populations rather than out in the wilds of Cambridgeshire or the likes of that. But certainly something to be considered.
Yeah, I don't think anything should be sort of taken off the table now. I don't think anyone's in a position to not have an open mind. But I'm just sort of conscious of time. I don't want to keep you all here for too much longer tonight. But how can clubs prepare themselves to bounce back? What can they be putting in place or getting ready financially or sponsorship or funding wise in order to get back on a level playing field before the playing happens? Mark?
I think from my perspective, sort of open with it. I think the proactivity now, it's not waiting till we can go back and get back to games to then start thinking about what we're going to do differently. I think there's been some great examples of clubs that have done. I think the time for GoFundMe pages and just giving pages has kind of been and gone. But we've seen some great campaigns, and I mentioned a couple in a recent talk I gave for the RFU. I think Sutton Epsom and Wimbledon stood out to me. Two clubs that raised in excess of £30,000 in kind of 4 or 5 days to plug holes that their typical summer hire would have delivered them had COVID not hit. But for me, it's just about it's about engaging our members, and whether that's covering the topics we've talked about tonight, opening the bar, or just re-engaging them with content from our sponsors, some calls to action around some simple things that everyone can get involved in. For me, it's just all about getting going and being proactive. If we're not playing, there's plenty of stuff we can still be doing. And I saw a question that was asked earlier about non-sponsorship based revenue. There are plenty of things that we can be doing now I'm sure lots of people are zoomed out and webinared out, but there is loads of clubs that have run really successful quizzes on a regular repeating basis the entire time throughout lockdown. I know the Akuma Beavers, for example, it wasn't even for themselves. They're a nomad side. They do the Severn Circuit, but those guys have raised £8,000 or £9,000 on running quizzes. They've had sevens teams from all over Europe where they've toured and played, dialing in fancy dress competitions, themed nights, all based around quizzes. 100% of the proceeds have all gone to Shooting Star Chase, which is a fantastic charity. But if they can do it as a group of 20 players and raise £9,000, as clubs with hundreds, if not thousands, of members, we can really be kind of thinking differently about how we raise funds and and keep our members engaged. And for me, everything's about proactivity. We've just got to get busy now so that we make the return to play easier when we're given the green light. So for me, in terms of bouncing back, it's just about being proactive, whether that's your sponsors, engaging your members, getting all of those policies in place, doing all your checks, getting your signage up, doing some trial runs, bringing back 10 players to just run through the process of how we're going to run the one-way system through the club. Whatever it is, it's kind of get it done early, learn quick and adapt. And we will overcome. No one, we're not. People in the clubs want to come back. They're not stupid. We just got to, quite literally signpost the way. And I think we can be optimistic in the fact that rugby will return, and we will get back to everyone keeps talking about the new normal. I firmly believe that we will get back to what normality was before. It's going to take some time, and I don't think we need to over dramatize it. We just need to be sensible and proactive and get on with it.
Sid, from a Huntingdon point of view, what is in the pipeline to plug those gaps?
So I think it's all about communications. It's sort of like as Mark said, sort of like as long as you let people know what's going on, and signpost them, then we can get back to some degree of normality, or whatever that's going to look like. But good comms, be it through social media, through more direct communications at a team level, training, whatever. Good comms is really important right now, to let people know what we're doing, so that people can prepare for when we're allowed back.
And Jimmy, how's preparing?
We are pretty much the same what Mark and Sid have already said. We're open on Saturdays now, hopefully the weekends in the bar, so hopefully that will bring back the members, re-engage them. We're aiming for having our end of season presentation like the week before the season is supposed to start. I'm just trying to bring more social, where possible, the social side of it back to the club, small groups, just that sort of side of it. We're obviously re-engaging with all our older members. There's a lot of people that are trying to come back to the club now, which is positive from what's happened. Obviously refound the love for the club again, so we're just trying to manage the membership. That's all.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder, as they say. We'll be back in the bar soon, I'm sure. Right then, chaps. Thank you for joining me this evening. It's been a great discussion. Hope everyone watching got something out of it. Got their question answered. And if you didn't, then obviously email us and email me info@fybrugby.com, and we can certainly put your question to Jimmy or Mark offline. Next week, the panel is going to be about the growth of the women's game. But if you want to be on that panel, then again, drop me a DM. Would love to hear from you. Again, that'll be next Thursday at 6:30. In the meantime, Sid, Jimmy, Mark, thank you for joining me tonight, and all the best for your listeners. And we will speak soon, I'm sure.
Very good. Thanks very much.
Cheers. Thank you.